Sarah lived in a quiet town called Pine Creek. She was 27 years old and worked at an animal clinic helping sick pets. She had long brown hair and kind eyes that showed how much she cared for animals. Everyone in town knew Sarah because she always smiled and waved hello. Sarah lived alone in a small blue house at the end of Maple Street. Well, not completely alone. She had Max, her golden retriever, who was her best friend. Max had soft golden fur and big brown eyes that seemed to understand everything Sarah said to him. She got Max when he was just a puppy 5 years ago. Every day after work, Sarah would take Max to Green Park for a walk. Max loved running around and chasing squirrels. Sarah loved watching him play and be happy. The park had tall trees, green grass, and a small lake where ducks swam. It was their special place. Sarah had a brother named Mike who was in the army. Mike was older than Sarah by 3 years. He was strong, brave, and very protective of his little sister. Mike had been gone for 2 years fighting in a war far away. Sarah missed him every day. She kept a photo of him in his uniform on her wall and wrote him letters every week. One day, a group of bikers came to Pine Creek. They wore black leather jackets, had tattoos, and rode loud motorcycles. The leader was a man named Ray. He had a scar on his face and cold eyes that made people feel scared. Ray and his friends started hanging out at Green Park, drinking beer and being loud. People in town began avoiding the park because of the bikers. Parents took their children to play somewhere else. Dog owners found new places to walk their pets. But Sarah still went there with Max because it was their routine and she did not want to change it. One evening, Sarah was walking Max in the park. The sun was starting to go down, making long shadows on the grass. Sarah was thinking about what to make for dinner when she saw the bikers sitting at the picnic tables near the path. There were 5 of them talking loudly and drinking. Sarah held Max's leash tighter and kept walking. She did not look at the bikers, hoping they would ignore her. But Ray noticed her and stood up from the table. He stepped into her path, blocking her way. Sarah stopped walking and felt her heart beat faster. "What do we have here?" Ray said, looking at Sarah and then at Max, a pretty girl and her pretty dog. Sarah looked down at the ground. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "We are just going home." Ray laughed, and his friends joined in. "Why so hurried?" he asked. "Stay and have a drink with us." "No, thank you," Sarah said. "I need to get home." She tried to walk around Ray, but he moved to block her again. "That dog looks soft," Ray said, reaching out to touch Max. Max backed away, not liking the stranger. "Come here, dog," Ray said in an angry voice. "Please," Sarah said. "We just want to go home." Ray looked at his friends and smiled a mean smile. "I don't think so," he said. "I want to pet your dog." Max sensed Sarah's fear and began to growl softly. Ray did not like this. His face changed, becoming angry. He stared at Max with hate in his eyes. Sarah felt very afraid now. The other bikers were standing up and coming closer. The sun was almost gone, and the park was empty. No one was around to help her. She wished her brother Mike was there. He would know what to do. He would protect her and Max. But Mike was far away fighting in a war. She did not know what Ray would do next, but she knew it would be something bad. Sarah held Max leash tight, preparing to run if she had to. The evening that had started so normal was turning into something frightening. What would happen next would change everything. Ray was not happy that Max was growling at him. He took a step closer, making Max bark loudly. Sarah tried to pull Max away, but Ray was too close now. "What is wrong with your stupid dog?" Ray shouted. "Teach it some manners." Sarah felt tears in her eyes but tried to be brave. "Please let us go," she said. "Max is just scared." Ray looked at his friends, who were all watching and laughing. He seemed to get more angry because he had an audience. Ray was the kind of man who needed to look tough in front of others. "I will teach that dog a lesson," Ray said. He took another step towards Sarah and Max. Max barked again, trying to protect Sarah. This made Ray even more angry. Without warning, he kicked Max hard in the side. His heavy boot hit Max with terrible force. Max made a horrible yelping sound that broke Sarah's heart. The dog fell to the ground, whimpering in pain. Sarah screamed and dropped to her knees beside her beloved pet. "How could you do that?" she cried, looking up at Ray with tears streaming down her face. "He did nothing to you." Ray and his friends just laughed. They thought hurting a helpless dog was funny. "That will teach him to bark at me," Ray said, taking a drink from his beer bottle. Sarah gently touched Max, who was shaking and crying in pain. She could tell he was badly hurt. His side did not look right, and he could barely move. Sarah had worked at the animal clinic long enough to know that Max might have broken ribs. "What you gonna do about it, little girl?" one of Ray's friends asked, still laughing. Sarah was scared but also angry. "You are horrible people," she said through her tears. "I will call the police." Ray made a fake scared face and then laughed again. "Go ahead," he said. "By the time they get here, we will be gone. And who will they believe anyway? Just a girl with a clumsy dog that fell." The other bikers laughed harder. They were cruel men who enjoyed seeing others suffer. Sarah knew they were right about the police. It would be her word against theirs. Carefully, Sarah picked up Max, who cried out in pain when she moved him. He was heavy, but her fear and anger gave her strength. She had to get him to the animal clinic right away. "Leave my dog alone," she said to Ray. "Stay away from us." Ray smiled an evil smile. "Maybe I will, maybe I won't," he said. "Pine Creek is a small town. I might see you and your dog again." This was a threat, and Sarah knew it. She backed away, still holding Max, who was whimpering softly now. The bikers watched her go, still laughing and making mean comments. Sarah walked as fast as she could without hurting Max more. Tears ran down her face as she headed to the animal clinic. Dr. Barnes would still be there doing evening checks on the animals, staying overnight. All Sarah could think about was getting help for Max. Her arms burned from carrying him, but she would not put him down. Every whimper from Max broke her heart. How could someone hurt an innocent dog just for fun? The sun had fully set now, and it was dark. Streetlights made pools of yellow light on the sidewalk. Sarah was grateful that the animal clinic was not far from the park. Max felt heavier with each step, but she kept going. As she walked, Sarah thought about her brother Mike. If he had been here, none of this would have happened. Mike was strong and brave. No one would dare hurt Max if Mike was around. Sarah missed him so much in that moment. Finally, Sarah saw the lights of the animal clinic ahead. Relief flooded through her. She would get Max the help he needed. Dr. Barnes would know what to do. But even as she hurried toward the clinic, Sarah knew this was not over. Ray and his friends would still be in town. They might hurt other pets or even people. Someone needed to stop them. Dr. Barnes was just closing up the animal clinic when Sarah arrived with Max in her arms. The older man with kind eyes and gray hair saw them through the glass door. The look on Sarah's face told him something was very wrong. He quickly unlocked the door to let them in. "What happened, Sarah?" Dr. Barnes asked as he helped her place Max gently on an exam table. Sarah told him everything between sobs. How Ray had kicked Max for no reason. How the bikers had laughed and threatened her. Dr. Barnes' face grew serious as he listened while examining Max. "These ribs are broken," Dr. Barnes said after carefully feeling Max's side. "He will need surgery and special care. This was no accident. This was done with force." Sarah nodded, unable to speak through her tears. She stroked Max's head gently, trying to comfort him. Max looked up at her with pain in his eyes, but still tried to lick her hand. Even hurt, he wanted to make her feel better. "I can operate tonight," Dr. Barnes said. "But Sarah, it will be expensive. Max will need special medicine and care afterward." Sarah did not hesitate. "Do whatever he needs," she said. "I have savings. I will pay anything to help him." Dr. Barnes nodded. He had known Sarah since she was a little girl. He knew she would give everything she had to save Max. That is why he had hired her to work at the clinic. She truly loved animals. "You should call someone to be with you," Dr. Barnes said as he prepared Max for surgery. "This is going to take several hours. You should not be alone." Sarah thought about who to call. Her parents had died in a car crash 3 years ago. She had friends, but no one close enough for this kind of emergency. There was only one person she really wanted. "I will call my brother," she said, "but he is far away in the war." Dr. Barnes gave her a sympathetic look. "You can use my office phone," he said. "Maybe just hearing his voice will help." Sarah went to the small office and closed the door. She rarely called Mike because it was difficult to reach him. They'd mostly communicated through letters. But this was an emergency. She dialed the special number for military family members and waited. After many transfers and long waits, a man told her that her brother was on a mission and could not be reached. Sarah left a message explaining what had happened and asking Mike to call when he could. She did not expect to hear back for days or even weeks. When Sarah returned to the exam room, Dr. Barnes had prepared Max for surgery. The dog was sedated and breathing slowly. Dr. Barnes and his assistant Lisa were wearing surgical gowns. "You should go home and rest," Dr. Barnes told Sarah. "This will take at least 4 hours. Come back in the morning." Sarah shook her head. "I will wait," she said. "I am not leaving him." Dr. Barnes understood. There was a small waiting room with uncomfortable chairs where Sarah could sit. It would be a long night, but she would not abandon Max. As Dr. Barnes took Max into surgery, Sarah sat alone in the waiting room. The animal clinic was quiet except for occasional sounds from the animals staying overnight. Sarah felt exhausted, but knew she would not sleep. Her thoughts turned to Ray and his friends. Anger burned inside her along with fear. What if they hurt someone else? What if they came back and hurt Max again when he was recovered? The police in Pine Creek were not equipped to handle men like this. There were only 2 officers for the whole town. Sarah took out her phone and looked at a photo of Mike in his uniform. Her brave big brother had always protected her when they were growing up. When bullies at school bothered her, Mike was there to stop them. When she was scared of storms, Mike would sit with her until she fell asleep. Mike had joined the army right after high school. He wanted to protect people and serve his country. He was good at it too. His letters told of dangerous missions, but always in a way that would not make Sarah worry too much. She knew he left out the worst parts. Sarah stared at her brother's face in the photo. His eyes were different now than when he was younger. They had seen things that changed him. He was still Mike, but harder somehow, more serious. In his last letter, he had written that he would be coming home in 2 weeks. His tour of duty was finally ending. 2 weeks felt like forever now. Sarah needed her brother here. She needed someone who was not afraid of men like Ray. Someone who would understand what to do. As Sarah sat in the quiet waiting room, a plan began to form in her mind. She would call the military office again tomorrow. She would explain that there was a family emergency. Maybe they would let Mike come home early. Sarah spent the night in the waiting room of the animal clinic. She did not sleep much, sitting in a hard plastic chair. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Ray kicking Max and heard the terrible yelp of pain. Around midnight, Dr. Barnes came out, still wearing his surgical gown. He looked tired but gave Sarah a small smile. "The surgery went well," he told her. "Max has 3 broken ribs, but I was able to set them. He is stable now." Sarah felt tears of relief in her eyes. "Can I see him?" she asked. Dr. Barnes nodded. "He is still under anesthesia, but you can sit with him for a few minutes." He led Sarah to the recovery room, where Max lay on a soft blanket. The golden retriever was breathing slowly. His side was shaved and stitched where Dr. Barnes had operated. He looked small and vulnerable. Sarah gently touched Max's head, careful not to disturb him. She whispered to him that she loved him and that he would be okay. Max did not wake up, but Sarah felt better being close to him. "He will need to stay here for at least 3 days," Dr. Barnes explained. "Then he can go home, but he will need special care. No walking or running for several weeks, special medicine for pain. It will be a long recovery." Sarah nodded, understanding what this meant. Max would need constant attention. She would have to take time off work. The bills would be very high, but none of that mattered as long as Max was alive. The next morning, Sarah went home to shower and change clothes. She felt tired and sad. Her house seemed empty without Max greeting her at the door with his wagging tail. She looked at the dog bed in the corner and his toys scattered around the living room. Sarah made coffee and sat at her kitchen table. She needed to make some phone calls. First, she called her boss at the pet store, where she worked part-time when not at the animal clinic. She explained what had happened and asked for a week off to care for Max. Her boss was understanding. Next, Sarah called the police station. Officer Wilson answered. He was older and had known Sarah since she was a child. Sarah told him about Ray and his friends hurting Max. Officer Wilson sighed when she finished. "I am sorry that happened to your dog, Sarah," he said. "But there is not much we can do. It would be your word against theirs. And to be honest, we have been getting complaints about those bikers, but we do not have enough officers to watch them all the time." Sarah felt frustrated but knew he was right. Pine Creek had a small police force. They could not be everywhere. After finishing her coffee, Sarah tried calling the military office again. This time, she got a different person who was more helpful. The woman listened to Sarah's story and said she would pass the message to Mike's commanding officer as an urgent family matter. Still, there was no guarantee Mike would be allowed to come home early. Sarah returned to the animal clinic to check on Max. He was awake now, but very groggy from medicine. When he saw Sarah, his tail moved slightly. That small gesture of love made Sarah cry again. Even in pain, Max tried to show he was happy to see her. While sitting with Max, Sarah made a decision. She took out her phone and wrote an email to Mike. She explained in detail what had happened with Ray and the bikers. She included her fear that they might hurt other animals or people in town. She told Mike how much she missed him and needed him. She sent the email knowing he might not read it for days. What Sarah did not know was that Mike had just returned to base from his mission. He was checking his messages when Sarah's email arrived. As he read it, his face changed. The other soldiers in the room noticed and became quiet. They knew that look. It was the same expression Mike had when going into dangerous situations. Mike went directly to his commanding officer's office. He requested emergency leave due to family crisis. The officer had already received the message from the military office. Seeing the look in Mike's eyes, he approved the leave immediately. Mike had never asked for special treatment before. If he was asking now, it must be serious. Within hours, Mike was on a military transport plane heading back to the United States. As the plane flew through the night, Mike stared out the window at the darkness. His mind was filled with thoughts of his sister and her dog. Mike had given Max to Sarah as a puppy before leaving for his first tour. He loved that dog too. But most of all, Mike thought about the man who had hurt Max just for fun. The man who had made his sister cry. Mike had faced enemy soldiers in battle. He had seen the worst that humans could do to each other. But there was something especially evil about hurting an innocent animal for entertainment. Sarah was at the animal clinic checking on Max when her phone rang. She did not recognize the number, but answered anyway. It was Mike. His voice sounded tired but determined. "I got your message, Sarah," he said. "I am coming home. I will be there tomorrow." Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. "Really?" she asked. "How did you get permission so fast?" Mike did not explain. He just said, "Does not matter. I am on my way." "How is Max?" Sarah told him about the surgery, and that Max was recovering, but would need weeks of care. She told him again about Ray and his friends, about how scared she was to go back to the park, or even walk around town. "Do not worry," Mike said, and his voice had changed. It was harder, colder. "I will take care of everything. Just stay safe until I get there." After talking to Mike, Sarah felt better. Her big brother was coming home. He would know what to do about Ray and the bikers. For the first time since Max was hurt, Sarah felt hope. Max was doing better too. Dr. Barnes said his vital signs were good and he was responding well to the medicine. He was still in pain, but it was controlled. Sarah sat with him for hours, stroking his soft fur and talking to him. She told him that Mike was coming home. Max seemed to understand because his tail wagged more. The next day, Sarah was at home preparing for Mike's arrival. She cleaned the guest room and put fresh sheets on the bed. She went to the store and bought his favorite foods. She wanted everything to be perfect for his homecoming. Around noon, there was a knock at the door. Sarah ran to open it expecting Mike. But it was not her brother. It was Ray. He stood on her front porch with two of his friends behind him. Sarah felt fear wash over her. How did he know where she lived? Her hands began to shake. "What do you want?" she asked, trying to sound brave. Ray smiled, but it was not a nice smile. "I heard your dog is in the animal hospital," he said. "Too bad. Maybe you should train him better." Sarah's fear turned to anger. "You hurt him on purpose," she said. "You are a cruel person." Ray's smile disappeared. His face became ugly with anger. "You should be careful what you say to me, little girl. Your dog got what he deserved. And you might too if you do not show some respect." His friends laughed and moved closer. Sarah realized she was in danger. These men had no problem hurting a dog. They might hurt her too. She started to close the door, but Ray put his foot in the way, stopping it. "We're not done talking," Ray said, pushing the door open wider. "We just want to be friendly neighbors." Sarah was about to scream for help when a car pulled up to the curb. The door opened and a man stepped out. He was tall and muscular, wearing military camouflage pants and a black shirt. His face was tanned from the desert sun. His eyes were hard and cold. "Mike," Sarah whispered. Ray and his friends turned to look at the newcomer. They did not seem worried. Just another person to intimidate. But they did not know Mike. They did not know what he had seen and done in the war. They did not know what he was capable of. Mike walked up the path to the house. His movements were controlled and precise. He did not look scared or angry. He looked dangerous. "Sarah, who are these men?" Mike asked, but he already knew the answer. He could tell by the way Sarah was shaking, by the fear in her eyes. "This is Ray," Sarah said, her voice small. "He hurt Max." Mike looked at Ray for a long moment. His eyes were like ice. In them was the memory of combat, of life and death situations, of hard choices and violence. "You need to leave," Mike said to Ray. His voice was quiet, but something in it made Ray take a step back. "We were just talking to the lady," Ray said, trying to sound tough. "None of your business, soldier boy." Mike moved so fast that Ray did not have time to react. In one smooth motion, Mike grabbed Ray's arm and twisted it behind his back. Ray gasped in pain and surprise. He tried to break free, but Mike held him easily. "My sister and her dog are my business," Mike said in the same quiet voice. "You hurt her dog. Now you are at her house threatening her. That makes it very much my business." Ray's friends started to move forward, but Mike gave them a look that stopped them. They suddenly realized they were not dealing with an ordinary person. They were facing someone who had been trained to fight, someone who had killed. "Now you are going to leave," Mike continued, still holding Ray's arm. "You are going to stay away from my sister and her dog. If I see you near them again, we will have a different kind of conversation. Do you understand?" Ray was in pain but still tried to sound tough. "You can't tell me what to do," he said. Mike applied more pressure, making Ray gasp. "That was not the answer I was looking for," he said. "Would you like to try again?" Ray finally nodded. "I understand," he gasped. "Let go of my arm." Mike released him with a small push that made Ray stumble. His friends backed up, not wanting to be next. They had come looking for easy targets, not a trained soldier. Mike stood between them and Sarah. He did not look angry or excited. He looked calm, and that was more frightening than if he had been shouting. "You have 10 seconds to get off this property," Mike said. "If you ever come back, I will consider it a threat. You will not like what happens next." Ray rubbed his arm where Mike had grabbed him. His face was red with humiliation and anger. He was not used to being the one in pain or afraid. For a moment it looked like he might say something else, but something in Mike's eyes changed his mind. "This is not over," Ray muttered as he backed away. "Come on, guys. This place stinks anyway." The bikers left, trying to look tough as they walked away. But everyone knew they had been beaten. Not with fists, but with the promise of what could happen. Mike watched until they got on their motorcycles and drove away. Then he turned to Sarah. She was still standing in the doorway, shaking a little. Mike hugged her tight, and she began to cry. All the fear and worry of the past 2 days came out at once. "It's okay now," Mike said softly. "I am here. They will not bother you again." Sarah nodded against his shoulder. She believed him. Mike always kept his promises, but she was still afraid. Not of what had happened, but of what might happen next. Ray did not seem like the kind of man who would give up easily. Mike helped Sarah inside and closed the door. The house was just as he remembered it. Photos of their parents on the walls. The old sofa where they used to watch movies together. It felt strange to be home after so long away. "How did you get here so fast?" Sarah asked as they sat in the kitchen. "You said tomorrow." Mike shrugged. "I caught an earlier transport, then rented a car at the airport. I came straight here." He did not tell her that he had not slept in 36 hours, that he had called in favors and broken rules to get home faster, that the look in his commander's eyes told him he understood exactly why Mike needed to leave immediately. Sarah made coffee and told Mike everything that had happened with Ray and the bikers, how they had been terrorizing the park, how Ray had kicked Max for no reason other than fun, how the police could not or would not do anything about it. Mike listened without interrupting. His face remained calm, but Sarah knew her brother. She could see the cold anger building inside him. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "I want to see Max," Mike said finally. They drove to the animal clinic together. Dr. Barnes was surprised to see Mike. The last time he had seen him was before he joined the army. The boy had become a man, a hardened man with old eyes. Max was doing better. When he saw Mike, his tail wagged harder than it had since the attack. Mike knelt beside the dog's bed and gently stroked his head, avoiding the tubes and bandages. Max licked his hand weakly. "Hey, buddy," Mike said softly. "I missed you. You are going to be okay." Dr. Barnes told Mike about Max's injuries, the broken ribs, the surgery, the long recovery ahead. As he listened, Mike appeared calm, but inside his anger grew. Hurting an innocent animal was the act of a coward. Ray was a coward who enjoyed causing pain. While Sarah talked to Dr. Barnes about Max's medicine, Mike stepped outside the clinic. He made a phone call to a friend from the army who had become a police officer in a nearby city. Mike asked questions about Ray and his group of bikers, what his full name might be, if he had a record, where they might be staying. His friend promised to make some calls and get back to him. Mike thanked him and went back inside. Sarah was ready to leave. Max needed rest and would stay at the clinic for 2 more days. As they drove home, Sarah noticed something different about Mike. He had always been protective, but now there was something else. A coldness, a distance. The war had changed him in ways she was just beginning to understand. "What are you going to do about Ray?" she asked finally. Mike looked at her. "Do not worry about it," he said. "Just focus on getting Max better." But Sarah did worry. She knew her brother. When someone hurt the people or animals he loved, Mike did not forget or forgive easily. And now he had seen things in war, had done things he never talked about in his letters. He was still Mike, but different too. When they got home, Mike carried his duffel bag to the guest room. He unpacked quickly, putting his few belongings away with military precision. Among them was a small wooden box that he placed carefully in the drawer of the bedside table. Sarah wondered what was in it, but did not ask. That night, they ordered pizza and watched an old movie they had loved as kids. It felt almost normal, almost like before Mike went away, before their parents died, before Ray hurt Max. But beneath the surface, things had changed. They both knew it. The next morning, Mike woke early. He went for a run around the neighborhood, seeing how things had changed and how they had stayed the same. He noticed details that most people would miss. Which houses had security systems, which streets had blind spots, where Ray and his friends might be staying. When he returned to the house, Sarah was making breakfast. They ate together, talking about simple things. Sarah told Mike about her job at the animal clinic. Mike told Sarah carefully edited stories about the places he had been. Neither mentioned Ray or the bikers. After breakfast, Mike borrowed Sarah's car. He told her he wanted to visit old friends. This was partly true. He did want to see people from his past. But he also wanted information. He drove around town, stopping at places where he might learn about Ray and his friends. Mike visited the diner where his high school friend Tom now worked as a cook. They talked about old times, but Mike also asked casually about the bikers. Tom told him they were staying at the Pine Creek Motel on the edge of town. That they came to the diner sometimes, always causing trouble, never tipping, scaring other customers. Mike drove past the motel. It was a rundown place with a blinking sign and peeling paint. 5 motorcycles were parked outside room 12. Mike memorized the license plates and the makes and models of the bikes. He did not stop or slow down. He just observed and kept driving. Next, Mike went to see Officer Wilson at the police station. The older man was happy to see him. They shook hands and talked about Mike's time in the Army. Eventually, Mike brought up Ray and his friends. Officer Wilson sighed. "I wish I could do more, Mike," he said. "But unless we catch them doing something illegal, we can't just run them out of town. That's not how the law works." "I understand," Mike said. "But what if they have warrants somewhere else? What if they are wanted men?" Officer Wilson looked interested. "Do you know something I done, Mike?" Mike shrugged. "Just a thought," he said. "Maybe worth checking into." He left the police station and drove to the animal clinic to check on Max. The golden retriever was doing better. His tail wagged when he saw Mike. The pain medicine was working well. Dr. Barnes said Max could probably go home tomorrow if he continued to improve. While Sarah spent time with Max, Mike stepped outside to take a phone call. It was his friend from the police department in the nearby city. He had information. Ray Donovan had a record. Assault. Drug dealing. There was even a warrant for his arrest in another state for aggravated battery. His real name was Raymond Donovan Walsh. His friends had records too. All of them were known members of a motorcycle gang called the Desert Vipers with ties to drug trafficking. Mike thanked his friend and hung up. Now he had what he needed. Ray was not just a local bully. He was a wanted criminal. This changed things, made what Mike was planning easier to justify. When Mike returned home, he sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. He wrote down everything he knew about Ray and his friends. Their location, their motorcycles, their habits and patterns. He was making a plan. A soldier always had a plan. Sarah came home from the clinic looking tired but happy. Max was doing so well, she said. Dr. Barnes thinks he can come home tomorrow. Mike smiled. That is good news, he said. I will help you take care of him. They had dinner together and watched another movie. Mike seemed relaxed, but inside his mind was working, processing information, considering options, examining risks. After Sarah went to bed, Mike took out his phone. He sent some text messages to friends still in the Army, men who understood what it meant to protect your own. He did not ask for help, not directly, but he let them know the situation. They responded with messages of support. Some offered to come to Pine Creek. Mike thanked them but said he could handle it. Then Mike went to the guest room and opened the wooden box in the drawer. Inside was a combat knife. His lucky knife, he called it. It had saved his life more than once. He looked at it for a long time thinking. Then he put it back and closed the box. Later that night, Mike left the house silently. Sarah did not hear him go. He walked through the dark streets of Pine Creek, moving like a shadow. No one saw him. The soldier who had learned to move through enemy territory unseen. Mike went to the park where Ray had hurt Max. He stood in the exact spot where it had happened. In his mind, he could see it all. His sister crying, Max in pain, Ray laughing. Mike's hands curled into fists at his sides. Then Mike walked to the Pine Creek Motel. The place was quiet. A single light burned in the office. Room 12 was dark. The motorcycles were still parked outside. Mike did not approach the room. He just watched from a distance, learning the layout, the exits and entrances, the weak points. Mike went to the guest room and opened the wooden box again. He took out the knife and slipped it into his boot. Then he put on dark clothes and a black jacket. He moved quietly so he would not wake Sarah or Max. This was his problem to handle, his family to protect. Mike slipped out the back door into the night. The air was cool and still. He could hear the motorcycles a few blocks away. They were circling, looking for weakness. Mike knew their kind. They were predators who targeted the vulnerable. But Mike was not vulnerable. He was a hunter too. Mike moved through the shadows of the neighborhood using the skills he had learned in combat. He followed the sound of the motorcycles. 5 of them. All of Ray's group was out tonight. They were getting bolder, more dangerous. Mike tracked them to the park, the same park where Max had been hurt. They had gathered at the picnic tables with bottles of beer, laughing loudly, disturbing the peace that should exist in such a place. Mike watched from the trees. He could hear their voices. They were talking about Sarah, about her dog, about Mike. They did not sound afraid. They sounded angry, ready for revenge. Ray was speaking the loudest. Mike could see his face in the dim light of the park lamps. He was telling his friends they should teach Sarah and Mike a lesson. That no one threatened him and got away with it. That they should go to the house tonight and show them what happens to people who disrespected the Desert Vipers. Mike had heard enough. He pulled out his phone and took pictures of the group, evidence of their presence in the park after hours, breaking open container laws. Then he sent the photos to Officer Wilson with a short message. They are planning something tonight. Officer Wilson responded quickly. Stay away, Mike. We will handle this in the morning. Do not get involved. But Mike knew morning might be too late. These men were drunk and angry. They were talking about hurting his sister, about finishing what they started with her dog. Mike could not wait for official justice, not when Sarah and Max were in danger tonight. Mike considered his options. He could confront them now. 5 against 1. Not good odds for most people. But Mike was not most people. Still, a direct confrontation could lead to serious violence. People could die. That was not what Mike wanted. Instead, Mike decided on a different approach. He moved silently back through the park toward the motel where the bikers were staying. Their room was empty now. All of them were at the park. It was the perfect opportunity. Mike examined the motorcycles parked outside room 12. With quick, efficient movements, he made small adjustments to each bike. Nothing that would cause crashes or injuries. Just enough to prevent them from working properly. To keep the bikers from riding tonight. From reaching Sarah's house. When he finished, Mike melted back into the shadows. He walked quickly but calmly back toward the park. He needed to know if his plan had worked. If the bikers would give up for the night when their motorcycles failed. As he approached the park, Mike heard angry shouts. The bikers were arguing now. Ray was yelling at one of his friends. It sounded like they were fighting about money, about drugs, about who was responsible for their current troubles. Good, Mike thought. Let them fight each other. Let them fall apart from within. Mike watched for a while longer, making sure the argument continued. Making sure they were too distracted to think about Sarah or Max. When he was satisfied, Mike slipped away and headed back to the house. As he walked, Mike thought about tomorrow. About the police coming to arrest Ray and his friends. About justice being served through proper channels. Mike had not forgotten the law. He had just delayed the bikers, kept them from doing more harm until the law could take over. When Mike reached Sarah's house, he checked all the doors and windows, making sure everything was secure. He looked in on Sarah, who was sleeping peacefully. Then he checked on Max. The dog opened his eyes and thumped his tail weakly when he saw Mike. Mike patted his head gently. "I took care of it, buddy," Mike whispered. "You rest now. Everything will be fine." Mike went to the guest room and put the knife away. He had not needed it, had not crossed that line. He felt relieved. The war had taught him to fight, but also to know when not to fight, when to find another way. Mike lay on the bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow the police would come. The bikers would be arrested. Sarah and Max would be safe. Mike had done his job as a brother, as a protector, without becoming what he fought against, without becoming like Ray. Mike woke early the next morning. He checked his phone and saw a message from Officer Wilson. 4 patrol cars from the city would arrive at 9:30. They would meet at the police station and then go to arrest Ray and his friends. Everything was on schedule. Sarah was already up making coffee and checking on Max. The dog seemed stronger today. His eyes were brighter. He ate some food from Sarah's hand. Small steps of recovery that meant so much. "Did you go out last night?" Sarah asked suddenly. "I thought I heard the back door." Mike did not lie to his sister. "Yes," he said. "I couldn't sleep, so I went for a walk." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. "You went to find them, did you?" she said. "Ray and his friends." Mike sipped his coffee. "I just wanted to make sure they stayed away from here," he said. And they did. Sarah did not ask more questions. She trusted Mike, knew he would not do anything foolish or dangerous. Not without good reason. After breakfast, Mike told Sarah he needed to go out for a while, that he had some business to take care of. She nodded, understanding that he would not explain further. Before he left, he knelt beside Max and patted the dog's head. "I will be back soon, buddy," Mike said. "You take care of Sarah while I'm gone." Mike drove to the police station. Officer Wilson was waiting along with 4 officers from the city. They looked professional and prepared. Mike felt relieved. This would be handled properly. Legally. "The plan is to go to the motel first," Officer Wilson explained. "According to your information, that's where they're staying." Mike nodded. "Room 12, he confirmed. 5 of them total." The officers checked their weapons and equipment. Mike watched, feeling a strange mix of emotions. Part of him wanted to go with them, to see Ray arrested, to watch justice happen. But another part knew this was not his fight anymore. He had protected his family. Now it was time for the law to work. As the officers prepared to leave, Mike shook Officer Wilson's hand. "Thank you," he said, "for taking this seriously." Officer Wilson nodded. "No thanks needed," he replied. "It's my job. And Mike, this needs to be by the book. No vigilant stuff. No revenge. Just the law doing its work." Mike understood. He promised to go straight home and wait for news. When Mike arrived back at Sarah's house, she was sitting on the porch with Max. The dog was on a soft blanket enjoying the morning sun. He looked peaceful. Sarah looked worried. "What's happening, Mike?" she asked as soon as he sat down. "Where did you go?" Mike decided Sarah deserved the truth. "The police are arresting Ray and his friends right now," he said. "They had warrants. Other crimes they committed before coming here." Sarah's eyes widened. "You found this out how?" Mike shrugged. "I made some calls to friends. People who could check records. Ray is just a bully. He's a wanted criminal." Sarah was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "Will they go to jail?" she asked finally. Mike nodded. "Most likely. For a long time." They sat together on the porch watching the quiet street. Neighbors walked by with dogs or children. Normal life continued all around them. After a while, Sarah's phone rang. It was Officer Wilson with news. "They got them," Sarah said after hanging up. "All 5 arrested without any problems. They found drugs in their room too. And stolen property." Mike felt relief wash over him. It was over. Ray and his friends would face justice. Sarah and Max would be safe. "Is it really that simple?" Sarah asked, looking at Mike with doubt in her eyes. "They hurt Max, threatened us, and now they're just gone." Mike understood her feelings. Sometimes justice seemed too clean, too easy. It did not heal all the hurt or fear. That would take time. "They will pay for what they did," Mike said. "Maybe not in the way that feels right to us right now, but they will pay." Sarah nodded and reached out to stroke Max's fur. The dog sighed contentedly under her touch. The moment was peaceful, a contrast to the tension and fear of the past few days. "What will you do now?" Sarah asked. "Will you stay in Pine Creek or go back?" Mike had been thinking about this question, about his future. The army had been his life for years. He had friends there, purpose, structure, but it also had taken him away from family, from home. "I have some leave time saved up," Mike said. "I can stay for a while, help you with Max, figure things out." Sarah smiled. "It would be nice to have you home," she said, "even for a little while." Mike looked at the quiet street, at the trees and houses, at his sister and her dog. This was what he had been fighting for all those years in faraway places, not abstract ideas of freedom or country, but this: family, safety, peace. Later that day, Officer Wilson stopped by. He told them Ray and his friends were being transported to the city jail, that they would face multiple charges, that they would not be returning to Pine Creek. Before leaving, Officer Wilson pulled Mike aside. "There was something strange," he said. "When we went to arrest them, their motorcycles wouldn't start. All 5 bikes had the same problem, almost like someone had disabled them. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" Mike kept his face neutral. "Motorcycles break down," he said simply, "especially when not properly maintained." Officer Wilson looked at Mike for a long moment. Then he nodded slightly. "I suppose they do," he agreed. "Well, have a good day, Mike. Take care of your sister and that dog." As Officer Wilson drove away, Mike felt a chapter closing. The threat was gone. Justice had been served. Not perfectly, perhaps. Not completely. But enough. Mike went back to the porch where Sarah sat with Max. The sun was warm. Birds sang in the trees. Max thumped his tail when Mike sat down. "So what happens now?" Sarah asked. Mike looked at his sister and her beloved dog. The future stretched out before them, uncertain but full of possibility. "Now we heal," Mike said. "All of us. Together." Sarah smiled, and Mike knew it was true. The physical wounds would heal. Max would run again one day. The fear would fade. Life would go on. And they would be stronger for having faced this challenge, for having overcome it. As the afternoon sun began to set, Mike thought about mercy, about justice, about the fine line between them. He had seen the worst of humanity in war, but he had also seen the best. People who protected others, who stood up against cruelty and evil, who chose right even when it was difficult. In the end, Mike had not needed the cold mercy promised in the title of this story. He had found a better way, a path that brought justice without becoming what he fought against. That was the real victory. Not just protecting Sarah and Max, but protecting his own humanity in the process. Max rested his head on Mike's lap and closed his eyes peacefully. Sarah brought out lemonade, and they sat together watching the neighborhood children play in the distance. This was home. This was what mattered. And as long as Mike had breath in his body, he would protect it. Not with violence when it could be avoided, but with whatever means necessary when it could not.